Welcome back to part 3 of the mountain lion cub. Now it's time to start adding some fur. I have my 211 white NuPastel, and I'm using the edge to add fur on the mountain lion where the fur is white, which is down the center of the mountain lion. So I'm being very careful that I add the hair in the way they should grow. They're going to grow straight down in the center of the cat, and then they'll go to the right or the left depending on which side. So they'll go to the left on the left side, but they'll go towards the right on the right side. So be very careful, add them one by one, sharpen your pastel often. Now, when they start to get a little bit golden, I'm using a 247 light Naples yellow, which is a little bit lighter than the 276. I'm also going to use 276. So I'm using white in the center and then the lighter yellow just to the sides. This is 276 buff, and it's a lovely Naples yellow kind of color. So I'm using it in the shadow areas to make the hair, well, really in the brown areas of the coat to make it kind of golden. We need a lighter color than the brown, and this is perfect. Now for a medium value, I'm using 233 raw sienna, which is a wonderful gold color, and it provides just the right medium value for our fur. It adds real interest. Now I'm using a 247 right now, which is really a cream color. It's very, it's lighter than the buff color. It's just kind of like an off-white. Now I'm adding a little more detail in between some of these hairs with the tip of the 353 cordovan. And this is the white. So the hairs are going to get brighter and whiter as we work down the center. You can see there's quite a bit of difference in this color than in the pale cream that we added in the row ahead of it, in the stripe that's just above this one. I can use the corner to draw some of the hairs with too. I've sped this up just a little bit while I add the hairs. Hatting hairs can be a long process, but it's well worth it for you to take your time, Sharpen your pastel as often as you need to. Use the edge and rotate often to get a nice, sharp little hair. You can see how pretty these look. Now, after we've added the light colored hairs, I can take my charcoal pencil and come back in and add a few black hairs, which adds some definition in between all of these white hairs. I don't want to do it everywhere, just a few places. It makes a big difference. Now I'm using the white 211 to add a few hairs on the face. Here I'm using my number 47 Conte pencil to add the light cream colored hairs. I could use my 276 buff, but this Conte pencil works very well to add a few crisp hairs. And some of you may find it easier to use than the edge of your pastel pencil. I'm continuing to add white hair to the cat. I've sped this section up a little bit. I'm using a 211 white. Now I've slowed things back down, and I'm using a 263 Indian Red to add a little brown up around the neck area there. It needed just a little more color, and now I'm back to adding white. Now as I work down towards the bottom of the mountain lion cub's chest, I've switched to the 299 light gray NuPastel. We want the brighter hair in the center, and then we're going to gray it down as we work towards the shadow area on the chest. I'm still working on the white hair. Varying the direction and taking my time. Take lots of breaks if you need to, and just keep working on that fur. Now I've come to an area on the cat's leg that looks kind of like a cowlick. So I'm being very careful that I draw the hair in the swirl pattern that I see in my reference photo. And this reference photo came from Holly Cannon's Patreon page, and it might also be on her free reference photos for artists page. This is the 263 Indian Red. I'm adding a little brown. And now I'm going to use my white charcoal pencil to put in some sharper hair. I'm continuing to work around this little area where the fur swirls, following the pattern of the fur as close as possible. As I move to the outside edge of the cub, I've switched to the 247 Light Naples Yellow. If you don't have that, you can also use the 276 Buff, which are both a creamy color. The 247 is much lighter, and putting the warmer hairs on the outside edge of the cub. Here again, I'm changing the direction of the fur, making sure that it goes as it does on the actual animal. Flips up a little bit on that side. Now I'm going to use my dark green, which is 627.2 Cinnabar Green Deep, and I'm using it kind of on its edge to kind of push the background close up to the cat. You're going to have to tweak the background as we add the outside hair to make it kind of fit together like it should and make it more seamless and have a neater appearance. After I do that, I can take my pastel, my 247, and pull out some additional hair into the background. This is the 47 Conte pencil. It works very well to pull out lighter hair. Keep in mind that the pencils are not going to be as highly pigmented as the sticks. Now I'm adding additional fur hair with my 211 white, and I'm also going to tweak this right side of the cat some with my white charcoal pencil as well, adding additional hair as I think I need it. The white charcoal pencil can be really effective for adding just a couple of sharp, wispy hairs. And also by pulling these hairs down into the next layer, it helps to blend one layer into the next. He's looking very fluffy and very pretty. I've moved over to the left side of the cat, and I'm beginning to add the hair. Now on this side, the hair goes straight down in the center, and then it changes directions, it moves to the outside of the cat. So on this side of the cat, the hair is going to be moving towards the left side. I'm continuing to add hair. Now remember, this is slightly speeded up. I didn't speed it up very much, just a little bit. Changing direction as I go. And this is a 211 white NuPastel. I have to tell you, I use a lot of white NuPastel when I paint my animals, so I always have several on hand. You can also use a pastel chalk extender that you can get at Jerry's. You can also get them at Amazon, I believe, and that helps to lengthen your stick so you can get more use out of it. But it's always a good idea to have several highlight colors around or other colors you know you're going to be using a lot of. So we're just adding these hairs carefully and developing this coat. It looks really good. Here I'm working around the other little cowlick of sorts that's on the other leg, like we did on the other front leg. We've moved over, so I'm adding those hairs in the direction that they go. They just kind of swirl around. Now this is a useful tip. When I want to gray down some hair, but I don't want to add black, I can use my 9B graphite pencil. It's just perfect for graying down an area slightly. And here I'm using my 353 Cordovan to kind of put some reverse work, some background color in between some of those white hair, and then I can pull out a few wisps with my white charcoal pencil. I'm using a softer white pastel to make some brighter hair right in the center. So I can use a Rembrandt 100.5 soft pastel, or I can use a Diane Townsend number 10, which is my favorite really bright white pastel. We're just using it for an accent in the center of the cat's chest. I'm adding a few more hair in this little area, and my hand goes off screen, I apologize, and we're just finishing that up. And now I'm using my charcoal pencil to add a few black hair back into this area, pulling the dark hairs out from the center of the little cowlick, and using the sharp charcoal pencil. This will be number 2 charcoal pencil to add some black hair. Now I've changed my camera angle, and I'm using my pastel to work the hair further down the cat on the legs. I've switched to a 276, which is the buff color, to work the hair out towards the side. So we finished the chest area, and we're working on the side of the mountain lion, and from there we'll work towards the stomach, and the angle of the hair changes in each part of his body. I'm using a very light touch, can't stress that enough, just not much pressure, very light pressure to put these hairs in. And you can see I'm holding my stick almost horizontal to the picture to get those delicate little hair going in the right direction. Now I have my 229 black NuPastel, and I'm using it to put a few dark hairs in between the lighter ones. And I've picked up the 276, and I'm continuing to add those light hairs going down the other leg of the cub. And you can tell from looking at this that I vary the directions that the little hairs go greatly on the leg. They're kind of wild. Be sure that you don't just put them in a row all in the same length and then the same direction. It doesn't look much like an animal that way. You've got to vary the direction that the hair grows in. As I work down the leg of the cat, there are some spots, but they are less pronounced than the other spots on the cat's body. I had placed them earlier in our beginning stages with dark brown, and I'm not going to add more to that. I don't believe at this point. I'm just going to pull the hair on the leg over the top of that and let it kind of show through the layers of the hair. I've zoomed out my camera angle so you can see further down as I add the hair down the leg into the foreground. The black 229 that I'm using now, I'm shading in the very edge of the back leg, which is visible between the front two legs. You can see the paw of the back leg, and this is the edge of the back leg. So I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to use, this is 211 white, the very edges of this front leg of our mountain lion. Okay, I've sped this section up a bit, and we're just adding those final hairs, working all the way down to the bottom of the paw. Adding a little bit of darkness here where the spot is, but not making it very pronounced. So this is just a little additional color. So we've gotten all the way down to the bottom of the paw. I'm just indicating the little toes of his foot and finishing up the fur in that area. I'm darkening around the toes at the top and underneath with the tip of my 229 black NuPastel. Just giving a little definition there. Finishing up this leg, I'm adding a few wisps with my white charcoal pencil, pulling them into the background. And this is the number 47 Conte pencil. I'm adding a few hairs with that one as well. I'm just looking around these legs and seeing what else needs to be done to them before I move on. I'm using my 229 black NuPastel to darken that back foot a little bit around the bottom and side. Decided to add a few more hair in the front, so I used my 211. I'm just making little adjustments now. Here I've turned my cat on its side so that I can draw the hair on the cat's stomach more easily. Always turn your paper if you need to so that you can more easily draw in the hair. In this case, the hair are horizontal to my surface. They go straight out. There's no angle to them, so I want to make them straight. And by turning it, it's much easier on my hand. And you can see I'm adding the hair. I'm using my 276, and I'm also using 247 light Naples yellow to add these pale yellow hair. I'm varying the direction somewhat. They're not completely straight, but they are horizontal. And they're beginning to angle down a little bit as we get towards the bottom, the stomach area of the cat. Now I've switched to 211, NuPastel, which is white. I'm using the tip of my 353 Cordovan to add a few dark hairs. Dark brown hairs, this beautiful color. And now I'm using my white 211 to add the second band of hair. Because of the stripes in the mountain lion, we have different rings of hair. Now we can tell it's that way. We want to make it fluids. We want to show the bands, but we don't want them to be too prominent. So we're going to weave the hair back and forth to get a more even, smooth appearance. We want the focus to be on his face and not so much on all of this hair that we're adding. So we're going to put it in, then we're going to blend it in. I'm going to show you how to do that, how to kind of weave the rings together a little better, the stripes, so that they flow together a little better. I think that's the most important part, is getting them to flow together. This is 263 Indian Red, adding some more middle value brown in there. And then back to my light Naples Yellow, number 247. It is kind of an off-white with a very slight cream tint, which looks very nice here. I'm adding more hair and then using the 263, adding a little more brown between that as well. I'm getting close to the outside edge of our mountain lion, adding more hair. And now I'm going to use the number 32 Umber Pencil, which is that gray-brown, to start adding some of that color in. It's a neutral kind of brown. It's not too red, not too dark. And by using it, I can weave these colors together a little better. We can create a better blend so that our cat doesn't look too hairy and too stripy. We can blend those areas together with that pencil. It's a great tool. In this area, I've gone back and forth between the number 247 light Naples Yellow and the 211 white, and this is the 299 gray. I thought the 299 gray was a little gray, so I'm putting 211 white on top of that. So I'm just changing the color as I see the need for it in my painting. I'm using my 32 pencil again to blend these areas together. Just pulling the brown from one stripe into the next one. It gives a very realistic look, and I'm really happy with the 32 umber. I'm adding the outside edges of the mountain lion cub's fur with 276 NuPastel. Again, using nice, sharp, light strokes. And now I'm using the dark green to 627.2 Cinnabar Green Deep Rembrandt to push green color from the background into the edges of the fur to make that a little more even transition. And now I'm pulling fur back out into that background, working on down to the bottom of our cub. I'll sped this up a little bit, and I'm just adding the fur down to the bottom of the cat, and as I'm doing that, I'm also working background into the area if it needs to be more even. If I need more color, I'm just using my Rembrandt to do that, and then pulling the fur out. It's looking very fluffy. I've switched to white now, and then back to buff. I'm working on down towards the bottom of the cat, using the buff, adding a little 353 brown every now and then as I need it. Just working down that back leg now as we get to the bottom. Now we're back upright again, and I'm using the 32 Conte pencil, the umber, to begin to blend these layers of fur together a little better. So I'm just using it where I think necessary, pulling out a few hairs here and there, and going back between the few layers. And you can do this as much as you would like, however your cat looks, what you think your cat needs to finish up those layers. So now I'm going to finish adding the fur in different places where I think it needs a little more hair, it needs a brighter color. This is a time to fine-tune your animal and add what your mountain lion needs. So I'm using my 211 white because the cat's white on the tummy, so it's white down. At the bottom, and so that's what I'm using right in this area. I've zoomed in now on the bottom part of the cat, adding hair on the stomach, hair in that little swirly area, and I'm going to finish adding the hair to the back leg. I'm using the 211 weight. Here I'm using my white charcoal pencil to add some sharp wispy hairs. And now I'm going back to a buff NuPastel to make the hairs lean a little more to the yellow side, or cream side, you could say. I'm using my Cordovan 353 to darken underneath the tail and get the background right up next to the foot. I've sped this up a bit and finishing adding the hair to that back leg with buff. We can't really see the toes on this leg. It's hidden by the snow that we're going to put in a little bit. The tail on the mountain lion cub is striped as well. I'm using the 353 Cordovan to outline the tail, smooth in the background around it. And this is 233 raw sienna, which is a gold color, which works very nicely back here on the tail. This is a great color. It comes in very handy. So I'm putting it on the darker stripes of the mountain lion's tail. I'm also using it in the back leg of the mountain lion, in the fur. It's a very nice accent. It helps to blend the colors together. I like that. I'm glad I used it. Works out well. Now here I'm using my 9B graphite pencil to blend in some of the areas or some hairs that look a little fat or uneven. You can use the graphite pencil to smooth those down. And now I'm using the buff 276 to add hair to the tail. Here I'm using the edge of 353 Cordovan to add some dark hair into the tail. So I'm using that flat edge. And now I have my black 229 to go a little bit darker on the tip. I'm adding a few more accents with my black 229. This is 263 Indian Red. I decided this area, I want the whole area to be a little more brown, so I can go over top of that with my 263 Now I'm picking out a couple of black areas with my 229 black pastel. When you are coloring over an area, as I did with the 263, the strokes underneath show through, and you can kind of glaze over it and add color. I'm going to add some snow. Here I'm using the 506.7 Ultramarine Deep to add a layer of blue to the bottom of the picture, which is going to be snow. Over top of that, I'm putting a light color of 570.8 Phthalo Blue to kind of blend that in. The Phthalo Blue has more white in it, and because it has more white added to the color, it helps to even out the texture. So I'm just adding that in. And we're getting a base coat down for this snow that we're going to put in. Here I'm drawing in this little area where the snow has melted through and there's a leaf growing out, and I'm using the 259 gray new pastel to draw this. I'm just sketching it in lightly. Sketching in a couple of other places too. Now I'm going over this with the 506.7 Ultramarine Blue Deep, kind of blending it in. And now I'm using the 570.8 Phthalo Blue to kind of go around the edge of this little melted place. We're just adding more white and seeing how that looks, kind of smoothing it out. By using the pastel up on its end and pushing a little harder, I can get a little more pastel to come off the stick. Here I'm using the end of a 100.5 Rembrandt white. And I'm adding the snow, the bright white color of the snow, onto my picture. And I'm going around this little place where the snow has melted down. And the darker colors I put in earlier become the shadows of that little hole. So I'm just going to work around that area and on the inside a little bit. Now here I'm using the end of my new pastel 211 white because I can use that edge to really sharpen up that area and get in around that little indented place, so it works a little better. You have to try different things, I think, in pastel and in other mediums. You try things and then when they work, you can file that idea away and use it in another painting. So that works well to use that 211. Now I'm using the flat edge of my 100.5 Rembrandt white to add snow over the foreground. Now the melted through place is a little bright, so I'm going to use the end of that white to tone it down some. That looks much better. was a little too much. And now I'm going to go back with my 9B graphite pencil to add a few little shadows on the edges of that little melted place. Now I'm going to use my white 100.5 Rembrandt. I'm using it up on its end to create the little mounded areas of snow right at the edge of our background area. A simple technique that gives a pretty realistic look of snow in our painting. I'm continuing to use that 100.5 Rembrandt to spread white over the blue, over the entire foreground to create the appearance of snow. I'm using a relatively light application to blend that in, and that the blue shows through. It just creates a beautiful look of snow. Now I can use a Unison or a Diane Townsend number 10, which is my preferred soft white, to even add brighter white accents of snow. We just want to add a few. The impact is in using a few. We don't want to do it all over, just in some areas. And it just increases the realism of the foreground. That's looking really nice. I'm continuing to add the softer white pastel over the background, adding the soft fluffy mounds of snow. That really looks nice. I'm using the very edge of my 211 NuPastel white to add what appears to be really little tiny snow crystals on the edges. It's very irregular on the edges. So I'm using the edges of the snowman. So I'm using the 211 NuPastel to add those edges. I'm also just using it in different places to add details. On the edge of this little melted place in the snow, I really like this little detail. It adds a lot to the painting. So to make that, add a little more white to that, make it a little brighter. And I'm also going to use my 9B pencil to add some sharper detail there. So join me for part 4 to finish up this painting.